He reached for the door of the black BMW, and a small warm hand blocked the motion like a seatbelt snapping tight. "Don't move," a whisper said, too adult for such small fingers. "Please." "They're listening." He froze, key almost kissing the lock. Night air hanging hot in the underground garage under 11th Avenue. Concrete smelled like damp cardboard and old secrets. A fluorescent tube above them flickered, casting hard blue-white across polished paint. Somewhere a shopping cart rolled on a flat tire and squeaked like a warning. On the back seat, a little girl with a dirty backpack hugged her knees so close her sneakers squeaked. City dust clung to her cheeks like glitter. Her eyes were wide and watchful, alley cat eyes that counted exits before choosing words. "Maya," she said later, 7. But in this second, she was just breath and bones, and don't. Michael Hartman, billionaire by brand articles and CEO by the stark letters on his office door, felt muscles he didn't know he still had go-taught. He had built a life on speed, fast deals, fast flights, fast pivots, but stillness won now. He let the key hover. He listened. In the far lane of the garage, an engine idled, too close to be random. He checked the mirror and saw the shape of a sedan, lights off, a silhouette that wanted to be a shadow. The fine hairs on his arms answered first. That instinct had kept him alive before he had money. It remembered things his suits tried to hide. "Where's your mom?" he asked quietly. A small chin tilted. A tiny finger pointed at the door's armrest. Under the soft leather, a strip of black tape. No, not tape. Someone had wrapped a wire and a mic neat as a gift, tucked into the seam like a secret. A cheap, tidy bug, wired by someone who'd done it before. Maya's lips barely moved. "They came for her," she breathed. "She heard them." He didn't ask who. The BMW's key felt heavier than metal in his hand. He didn't ask how the child had gotten in his back seat. Later, when the city and the story pressed him for timeline, he would recall only the hand, the words, and the way the air changed. Right now, he moved. Engine on. Headlights cut like heat through a night that had too many sharp corners. He backed out slow, not looking at the sedan in the mirror, because looking is a language. He rolled toward daylight like a man pretending he had somewhere ordinary to be. On the ramp up, his hand tapped the steering wheel twice. Habit. Plug and play. He had built global networks on less warning than a child's whisper. He could, at the very least, get a kid past a gate. Above ground, Manhattan laid itself out, all neon edges and wet streets. The river smelled metallic. The traffic on 11th growled. The sedan from the mirror came up too close, headlights dilated and eager. He turned east. 1, 2, 3 lights, not too fast. The dashboard blinked a text in pale blue. Boards at 9. The letters looked like a joke, written by someone who had never seen a garage. "Seatbelt," he murmured. A small click. Fabric swish. She didn't flinch at the rumble. It wasn't her first. Under the armrest, she pointed as they hit 10th. A napkin, folded and damp at the edges, paper dragging on leather. He slid it free. Names. 2 addresses. Words that were short and hard like nails. Keller, Pier 76. K, West 28th. Scattered phrases. Accident, written twice. A bank number with 2 digits boxed and underlined. He had seen board decks less useful. His chest folded inward. He had known responsibility as numbers, contracts, markets. But this felt like a weight with eyes. He could fix the stock price. He could not fix a childhood. But he could get her out of a car with strangers listening. That counted for something. He hooked a right. The sedan stayed steady. He ran through the math in his head, as if they were moving parts in a supply chain. Exit speeds, camera coverage, friendlies within 10 blocks. A bright blue awning slid by. D'Agostino. A guy in a hoodie crossed without looking. He thought of calling his head of security, then didn't. If they were in on it, that call lit a flare. If they weren't, he didn't want to test loyalty at 30 miles an hour. He took them into the car wash on 37th without signaling. A sudden right into neon foam. The guys at the entrance looked bored and barely awake, but boredom is its own kind of cover. He rolled the window down an inch. "Quick wash," he said. A bill slid with it. And a look under the frame. Now. Eyes met, measured, adjusted. The kid with the tattoo of a wing on his neck nodded, fingers flicking a code to someone at the end of the tunnel. The BMW rode the conveyor. Water hammered, brushes hissed. Under the hum, the city was a muted thing. Maya's voice came small. He said your name. Who? On the tape. She pointed at her bag. He said, correct the CEO. Michael's mouth went dry. He slid the napkin into his jacket pocket, as if paper could shield them. The phrases, they're listening, and they said your name, started to loop in his head like a broken turn signal. He had made enemies, sure, but enemies usually had better taste than tape. At the far end, the bay door lifted. The wingneck kid stood with a flashlight, crouched, and reached. He came up with a small black puck, magnet scuffed, LED winking like a sly eye. He didn't say anything. He held it up. Michael's stomach turned. GPS. He offered his palm. The kid placed the device in it, like it might bite. He crushed it under his heel. Plastic screamed. The wingneck kid flinched like he had heard a bone break. No charge, the kid said, eyes quick to the girl, then away. Michael nodded sharp. Words were expensive and time was poor. He pulled out, joining Midtown like nothing had happened. The sedan had vanished, or become a different one. In New York, both were likely. On 34th Street, he paused at a red that hadn't learned to turn. His phone vibrated. Need you, it said. Grace, his general counsel. He thumbed a quick, running late. He almost laughed at the phrase. Running late from what? He drove downtown, not too obvious, but not aimless. He knew the city's cameras better than he knew his own sleep cycle. Columbia had built the system 13 years back. He had donated to it. Back when donating felt simple, and applause felt clean. He slid through intersections he knew were watched. If they were still in the dark, he wanted it to be by choice. Mom, Maya breathed. Just that one word, so full it could flood a room. Name? Anna. The name folded on her tongue like a prayer. Ruiz. She called you? He asked. She told me to hide. She said if I see you, get in. A shrug. She cleans your office. There's candy sometimes in a jar, and I know the guard who sleeps and snores. He felt the slam of guilt then. The jar he put out with good intentions, the way good intentions become signs you never read. He had put candy where a kid could see, and the kid had thought of him when she needed a door. He tightened his grip on the wheel. Did you hear them? He asked. She nodded. 2. One said, we fix this. The board will smile. The other said your name like gum he didn't want anymore. He heard a voice in his head, a boardroom voice, wrapped in silk and logic. Michael, don't be dramatic. He pushed it away. He dialed 911 on the hands-free and spoke a city where words become corrected in real time. Emergency, he said, giving cross streets like coordinates from a war map. I have a miner who reports a threat, named Maya Ruiz. I believe my vehicle has been bugged and tailed. I'm requesting immediate assistance and protective detail at a public location. Sir, are you in a safe place? Calm voice, practiced. For now. He glanced at the girl in the rear view. But they're listening, he said, because the words were true beyond a device. There's a precinct 2 blocks from you, the operator said. Turn right on Varick. The corner is lit. I know the light, he said. At the corner, 2 officers stood under LEDs that turned skin into paper. They watched the BMW roll in, with faces that read, money first, and everything else second. One tapped the hood with his knuckles, like testing a melon. Sir, he said, slow. What seems... Maya moved first. She leaned forward, hood up, eyes bright with a kid's contempt for forms. She held the flash drive up, a pebbled plastic thing on a cheap chain, and the movement stopped all ceremony. Listen, she told them. Voice flat. Adult again. They listened. In a back room with a microwave and a refrigerator that hummed like a bad dream, an officer clicked the flash drive into an old desktop. The screen glowed. A file opened. The audio was soft, then clearer. Men's voices, paper sliding, a laugh, a tap on a table, and then, tonight, the warehouse, Pier 76. He parks there when he bikes in. If we engineer a leak, no, don't smile. If we engineer it, he'll have to answer for it. Investors need stability. A second voice, familiar, shape of vowels like a man who'd learned how to make words expensive. Even from a speaker, it made Michael's spine do something involuntary. Andrew K., his COO, his right hand. The caution he trusted when his own went too fast. Andrew's words kept going. This is how you move mountains, gentlemen. You don't push, you loosen. Think of the insurance. Think of the bump when the correction hits. If he steps aside for the good of the company, well, silence in the room, except for a soda machine clicking back to life. Michael watched the officers watch him. He watched a younger officer glance at Maya's backpack, pink, Target, scuffed on one corner, and saw the moment the city reached inside the badge and touched the person. "We'll move," the officer said. "Now." They moved fast under slow light. An unmarked car slid into the street. Grace, his general counsel, came in like storm wind, hair in a clip that had been bought for meetings, not nights like this. She looked at him once, hard, the way you look at someone you need to be both human and dragon. "We say nothing until we're sure," she said, words clicking into a plan. "We secure them, then we secure us." "I won't leave her," he said. He surprised himself. He meant it. "You won't have to," she said. The way she said it told him she hadn't slept much in months. At 2:13 a.m., they found Ana Ruiz in a staff closet on the 12th floor of his own building, curled against a vacuum with a handle that had chewed up the edge of her jacket. A guard had left her there like a purse. That detail lodged under his ribs. She looked up with a flinch that made him feel cheap. When she saw Maya, her body shook so hard the mop by her shoulder rattled against the wall. Words poured in 2 languages, too fast to track. Michael caught pieces. "Accident." They laughed. "I clean and I hear. I'm sorry. Forgive. I didn't know where to put her." He took a breath. He stood in a closet that smelled like lemon cleaner and dust and felt something he hadn't let himself feel publicly in years, shame for not seeing what was always in front of him. Outside, the hall lights flickered. Someone somewhere played a radio low, a sleepy sax line that felt like another city entirely. He had 3 calls from investors with area codes that meant flights. He had a board at 9. He had a ticking thing in his hand that wasn't time. He had a child whose mouth had set his night in motion. Grace leaned in. "We have to decide," she said. "If security is dirty, we call outside. We retain. We go loud or we go home." He thought of Pier 76. He thought of Andrew's tie clip, shaped like a tiny dagger, how it had always made him laugh. He didn't laugh now. He thought of the phrase, "engineer a leak," and wanted to break something he owned. "Loud," he said. At 3:04 a.m., he posted a short statement that his PR team would later call reckless until they saw the numbers. He thanked an unknown heroic citizen for stepping forward. He said witness protection would be provided. He promised his company would cooperate. He used the word "we" and meant "I," because sometimes language is a road you take alone. At 3:28 a.m., a group that did not like to be called hackers posted a screenshot of an internal email addressed to 6 names that made his mouth go dry. The subject line was "Correction Plan." The body read like something you're not supposed to catch. It included a bank number. It included AK. You could call it doctored, but it was too dumb to be fake. By 5, a reporter who liked to shape late-night tips into morning news stuck a mic in front of a precinct door and said words that made the sun hurry. Allegations, coup, internal sabotage. His name was everywhere, bracketed by verbs. At 6, Grace texted him one word: auditors. The word looked cleaner than it felt. At 7, he stood in his own lobby, where the air always ran 2 degrees colder than comfort, and watched 3 people in windbreakers present a warrant to a head of security who had too much hair gel and not enough perspective. The man's jaw jutted. He tried to square his shoulders, looked like a boy in his father's suit. "You can't just," he started. Grace's eyebrows did the rest. At 8:15, he walked into a press conference wearing a suit that fit and eyes that didn't. The cameras blinked like a field of insects. He had given speeches that made stock prices do tricks. This one wanted to make a different thing move. The first question cut. "Are you saying your own leadership is compromised?" He didn't feed the word "own." He let it sit. He learned early that ego loved an invitation and could ruin a day. "We're saying safety comes first," he said. He kept his palms open, fingers still, the way he had learned to in rooms where everyone wanted a piece of him. "We're saying a child brought us a truth we didn't go looking for. We're saying we're listening." He didn't say, "They're listening." He didn't have to. Behind the cameras, in a hallway with carpet that had seen too many shoes, a janitor pushing a cart slowed. He rested his forearms on the handle and watched. He wiped a tear with the back of his hand, like it might be dust. He'd cleaned this lobby for 5 years. No one had made him cry at work since his second day, when a manager had said, "You missed a spot," and he had almost quit because dignity and minimum wage don't always share a room. He watched the CEO say, "We're listening," and nodded to himself. Maybe he would see. Across town, in a condo that smelled like unslept night, Andrew K. watched the same feed with a face you could use to teach restraint. He rolled his tie up like a snake. He told himself things men tell themselves when they've stepped into a story and heard it say no. He dialed a number he'd always thought of as an escape hatch. No answer. He poured a drink he didn't want. He checked his email. He saw his own words on every screen. By noon, the SEC called. The word cooperate got used. By 2, the NYPD set foot in a warehouse, where pallets sat like patient beasts. A clipboard lay on a folding table with 3 lines highlighted. The fluorescent paper looked almost festive. A bank transfer attempt at 1:39 a.m. had failed. The failure had a name. He knew it before they told him. By 3, the first arrest made the kind of sound handcuffs always make on TV. Too crisp to be real. It sounded softer up close. A head of security whose knuckles went white when he heard the words, "You're under," looked less surprised than tired. By 4, one of the investors, brown shoes, blue suit, part in his hair so straight it hurt to see, went on cable and used the phrase, "unfortunate lapse in judgment," like a chewing gum wrapper you kept because your fingers needed something to do. By 4:30, Andrew walked into a room he didn't think he would ever walk into as the subject of a conversation. He kept his chin up and said, "Misunderstanding," and the air replied, "You wish." By 5, the board sent a message in language so careful it could wear a rosary. The word interim showed up like a quiet glacier. He didn't fight it. He walked out of the building with his jacket over his arm as if it were weather and caught a cab whose driver called him boss without knowing the joke. This is how a story moves when a child steers. Fast, erratic, true. Meanwhile, Maya sat on a couch in a safe room with a blanket around her shoulders that smelled like new laundry and nothing bad. She held crayons like a grown-up holds a pen. She drew a boxy house with a crooked chimney and a car that looked like a happy beetle. She drew a stick figure with 2 long arms waving. She drew a small hand reaching out to close a door gently. She didn't draw the men. You don't give monsters paper. Michael stood in the doorway and learned how to look without making it a performance. He hadn't earned the right to narrate her quiet. He just listened. He heard himself breathing and thought that was new. He called a doctor, real, not TV, who came with a bag that zipped and a tone that smoothed. And he watched the way the doctor spoke to Maya first and the way Maya nodded like she had read people older than him for practice. He called a therapist who returned his call inside an hour because sometimes money buys you speed but not care. This time it bought both, and he didn't feel like a thief when he took it. He asked Grace for a list of everyone on the overnight cleaning crew and saw his own blind spot in black and white. He stayed for the meeting when they offered hazard pay and real benefits, and he heard a woman ask whether those benefits extended to her son who needed asthma meds. He said yes before the sentence ended. He watched a man's face fold into gratitude so sudden it looked like pain. He thought of how many meetings he had left early before someone asked the real question. He walked the hall outside his office, the hallway where a night guard had snored while Anna hid in a closet, and saw the small scuffs on baseboards, the fingerprints near the elevator, the physical proof that buildings are human. He put his hand on the wall like a vow and tried not to laugh at himself. Sometimes vows need a wall. He went downstairs to the lobby and asked for something no one had on hand, and then 2 people, and then 3 got involved until a facilities manager brought him a glass cube, the kind used for awards when people like names etched on things. It was taller than a lunchbox. He set it on a table under the brass company name. People paused because glass cubes draw eyes by design. Into the cube, he placed the small shredded bug wrapped in its black tape, a strip of the tape curling like a question mark. Beside it, he laid a scuffed janitor's badge that Anna had worn for 6 years, the printed photo sun-faded, the clip stubborn and a little bent. He pressed Maya's drawing flat on a white card behind them. He printed a small line in clean sans serif and set it under the glass. When a small hand says stop, listen. He didn't call it art. He didn't call it anything. People called it what they needed. Someone snapped a picture. Someone else shook their head like maybe. The triage turned into program in a month. Lawyers signed, HR drafted. A union came in with eyes open and a list that had been written before without anyone listening. The Maya Fund sounded like a PR stunt until the first check got cut to a night porter whose wife needed surgery, and he cried into his hands in a break room where the microwave light made everyone look like they'd been carved from wax. The company established a policy that if an employee brought a safety concern, they would never, by policy, lose hours for it. It was mundane and radical at the same time. He renamed the second-floor breakout room the listening room. No feature wall. No plants that looked intelligent. Just a space with chairs that didn't hurt, and a sign-up sheet that didn't ask for a reason. He asked the facilities team to leave the paint scuff where a ladder had bumped the week before. He wanted a mark that said work was real. A reporter asked him on air if he was trying to save face. He thought of faces. He thought of Anna's when she thought she'd lost her daughter. He thought of Andrew's on a screen. He thought of his own in the mirror the night before, a map drawn by hands he didn't remember. He answered, "I'm trying to do the job." And the job changed. He went to Pier 76 without cameras and stood looking at the water where someone had wanted to engineer a new story. The Hudson's surface shook with the evening wind, light and dirty and honest. He put his hands in his pockets because he didn't trust them not to make a speech. He breathed. At dinner one night, he took a booth in a diner that made grilled cheese the way only diners do, and a couple of guys in suits sat 2 tables over and talked about him like he was a weather pattern. He didn't see it coming, one said, smirking. Rookie move. The waitress poured their coffee and didn't look at them. She put Michael's plate down with care, like his sandwich was fragile, touched his knuckles with 2 fingers, then was gone. He felt the stare from the suits and didn't meet it. Pride is a loud dog. He let it bark and chew its own leash. In a board meeting, a man with a tan that spoke of money asked him if all this soft stuff had a hard return. Michael looked at the line of zeros the man liked to stack like Legos and said, yes. He didn't say, people coming to work without fear of telling the truth is the only hard return I care about. He didn't need to. The numbers would make the shapes later. For once, he didn't try to draw them in advance. There were bad days. A troll farm wrote posts that made it look like Maya had been coached, like a child with a crayon couldn't see what men in suits pretended not to. He had money enough to fight it. He had sense enough to ask a teacher at a public school how to protect a kid without turning her into a project. He drove the BMW less and rode a bike more, not as an apology, but because movement sometimes calmed the machine in his head. A man in a truck rolled down his window one morning and yelled, "Sell out," like it was a good joke. He shrugged. He kept pedaling. The bike chain clicked, a tick-tock he could control. One evening, months later, he found himself in the very garage where a hand had stopped him. It smelled the same, oil and damp concrete and the metallic tang of a city humming above it. He stood where his hand had hovered and imagined the door he might have opened. It wasn't melodramatic. It was math. Open door, different story. Maya met him sometimes at the community center on 10th, where she did an after-school reading program. She read faster now. She read with her shoulders down. She liked the corner table by the bulletin board where notices about GED classes overlapped flyers for open mic nights. When she saw him, she didn't run to him. She nodded like an equal and went back to her page. That was the respect he had wanted all his life and hadn't known to ask for. In the quiet, after a day that had been too full of adults, he drove Anna home to an apartment where grocery bags doubled as trash bags, because why not reuse what holds? He carried a box of air filters up the stairs because the super didn't think they mattered, and then charged cash when they did. He watched Anna unlock her door with a key that had to be jiggled twice. He didn't offer vases or speeches. He said, "I'll see you Tuesday," which meant the listening room was for her too. He kept the napkin in his wallet. Words faded from travel. It reminded him that some plans fit on a torn square and save you anyway. It reminded him of the shorthand of crisis. Names, places, motives, how you rarely need the adjectives. He learned to hear his own building breathe, air handlers and footsteps, laughter and the click of a plastic cup cracking in a nervous hand. He noticed when security said, "ladies," like an apology. and when a guy in an elevator introduced a woman by her first name and a man by his title. He didn't file HR complaints for everything. He changed the temperature by standing in hallways until people felt the weather. He attended Andrew's hearing once, sat in the back where benches are hard by design. He didn't go for closure. Closure is a word you paste over a wound, like a sticker that says, "I voted." He went because endings deserve witnesses. Andrew raised his eyes and looked out over the room like there might be a camera, and Michael felt anger soften into the more complicated thing that comes after. He walked out before the sentence, which would live online forever, years and months, and restitution written into the shape of language. And when the city calmed, and the news trucks left, and the glass cube in the lobby became part of the building's posture, normal, a note on a tour, Maya drew a new picture. A room with a window, chairs, a rectangle on a table. She wrote under it, letters careful and tall, "Room for listening." She handed it to him like a receipt. He hung it in the listening room where light hit at 4 p.m., like a gentle slap. People stopped under it and read. Some laughed, some cried. It worked either way. One night, late, he sat alone with the hum of the LED lights and the smell of a coffee maker that had been asked to do too much in one day. He thought of the first whispered words in the garage and how they had turned the volume of his life down just enough to hear the thing that mattered. He let himself feel gratitude without looking for a camera. He wrote a note and slid it into the glass cube on a folded white card. He didn't sign it. "Thank you for stopping me." Outside, sirens went somewhere else. The city exhaled. The man who had learned to run learned to be still, just long enough to hear the next sentence forming in a small voice, in a big building where, for once, silence had not been an ally of harm. "Keep your ears open," he would say when someone asked for the moral and he wanted to make it short. That's where courage starts.